So this is his farm, and this is his original house, original barns. So his life here started when he was 33 years old. So it was the second half of his life. He lived 67 years. So 33 would be close to half. His wife Lucy had 5 children at that point. While they lived here, they had another 5 children.
You said another?
Another 5 children. So, but he was the oldest himself of 16 children.
Wow, so he had a small family compared to...
Yeah, it's all relative, right? So on the corner down here where we live in the yellow house as the caretakers, which is also owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that's where his parents owned well, they didn't own. They rented a 100-acre farm. So they were not, he was more financially secure here than his parents were down there in the corner. But in actuality, his father died 3 years before he built this house. So by the time he built this, his mother was a widow. So he actually paid for that farm for his mother to be debt-free. And it became, after she passed away in 1835, it became his youngest brother Solomon's farm. And so in the old county maps from the 1850s, it says on that corner, Solomon Miller Farm. So we call it the boyhood home because that's where he lived from 4 to 21. That was his home, but it's not the original house. So it's just the same location. So on this house, we still have the original green shutters, not the original paint, but still the same color that he painted them, and the same color of wood siding, but again, it's not the original siding. The slate roof tiles are the same kind of tiles he would have owned, but not, again, the original tile. So this part of the house is also original. Where we have a garage door was originally the wood shed. And upstairs is still a bedroom, and that's an original bedroom for where the hired man lived. So there's a separate stairwell that comes down here for him to go in and out of the house separately without having to go in to disturb the Miller family. So all the bedrooms are upstairs, but now we use that as an apartment for volunteers and interns. So it's not part of the tour, just the downstairs. But if you ever want to learn more about your history and volunteer, just let us know. We got a place for you to stay where Miller slept. So,
Oh, that's so cool.
So also, besides the house and the barns, you may have already seen Ascension Rock along the path in Miller Chapel, but if you'd like to see inside the chapel, we can open that for you after you see the house.
And what happened on Ascension Rock?
Well, that's unfortunately there's nothing written down, so we can't say for sure. But the story is that there was a group of people waiting there on October 22, 1844, for Jesus to come. They were expecting to ascend from that rock, so we call it Ascension Rock.
That's what they named it, or how it got its name?
Right. So there's many stories about that rock, some of which are obviously not true. One of which is when the rock collects water, you'll see a red rim around the puddles, and they say that's the blood from the people that committed suicide.
Oh, man.
So
But that's not what happened.
but that's just an example of the stories that are circulated today.
But does it really?
The red rims are there, yes.
Oh, they are there.
And it's bacteria.
Oh. Okay. Is the rock part of the tour?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll tell you more about the kind of rock and
When we get there.
yeah. So then the last part on your way out for the tour would be the cemetery. And a lot lot of people are really anxious to see that because of a quote from Ellen White in the book Early Writings that angels watch the precious dust of this servant of God, and he will come forth at the sound of the last trump. So I personally believe that's true of every believer that's resting in the grave, but she says that specifically, William Miller.
That'd be interesting to be around in that area and just see him come back.
She mentions that early writing.
She sure does. His grave is marked.
Wow.
So there's his grave, his wife's, his parents, some of his children, Solomon Miller, his youngest brother. But it's not a family cemetery, it's a community cemetery.
Oh, okay. So you'll see
So
other.
there's other community people that are there.
Was he a Sabbath believer? He wasn't, right? It was too early in the Millerite
Never
movement.
did, but because he lived up to everything he knew.
Okay.
So in the same quote, he mentions God was giving him more light, which is interesting because in the context of his letter in November of 1844, the month after he expected Jesus to come, he says, I fixed my mind on another time, and here I mean to stand until God gives me more light. So Ellen White in Early Writing says God was giving him more light, but he was actually resisting it. So it's interesting that we can be claiming we want to learn more, but actually not be receiving what he's trying to give us.
Is it because of the disappointment you kind of got pressed over that?
You don't believe, you don't believe he was put to sleep because maybe he might fall away from faith?
She does say that. She
Yeah.
says in mercy, God laid him in the grave to preserve him. But she says that it was his friends
Yeah,
who were
what's it?
influencing
His
him.
friends that were in the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had friends that had stood by his side through adversity and persecution, and he said they would not do me wrong. You know, I mean, he trusted in them.
So God just laid him to rest.
His wife died before or after him?
After 5 years after.
Anything about his children, grandchildren, great-grand, anything else?
The only child, and we have the list of the names of his children and his siblings in the museum, the only one who became a Seventh-day Adventist was Langdon, one of his sons, and that was in the I'm thinking 70s. Ellen White was at his baptism. He was older than she was, but it was in Chicago, Illinois. But she wrote about it in the review, his baptism. But we don't have any, evidence that anyone else in the family became a Seventh-day Adventist.
So the one that you just mentioned, that was an Adventist. Did he ever come here or live here? Or?
Well, he grew up here.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
it's one of his sons,
Okay.
but he moved away as an adult.
Okay. And now, and he never. That's what
We don't
I'm
have
saying.
record that
He ever
back.
came. That's what I'm saying. He never came back.
Some of his sons were members of the Advent Christian Church, which I'll talk more about in the chapel, but it's another denomination
Oh, okay.
that formed after the disappointment. So,
Does anyone claim now to be, great-great-grandchild of,
yeah, we have a great grandson that still lives just a couple miles from here in Vermont.
Look up to see.
Interesting.
Let's see it.
So unfortunately, he's not a Christian even, but he has a strong appreciation for the church and what we have done to honor his ancestry.
Wow.
Very
This
nice.
is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this
Right.
property?
Since 1984.
Oh, wow, that's recent.
Yes. So the family owned it until about 1950. So they held on to it for over 100 years, but then they sold it to Joseph Hazen, just someone in the community, not a relative, and he sold it to Paul Lucaris, and he's the one who sold it to the church. So the main difference in the house appearance on the outside is the chimneys. Miller put in a central chimney. His son tore that out and put in two other ones, and there's a chimney here and here for the regular kitchen and the outside kitchen. So all four of those that were here, probably in 1970, as late as 1970, the last owner tore out. so we have no chimneys
Oh.
anymore.
How much acres is the land?
Now the church owns 147, but in 1984 they just purchased 25. But it was 2011 when they purchased another 122.
So how much was the original? That was the original size that he owned, 100.
He owned up to 200, originally 160.
Oof.
And
That's all this, or there's more? There's more somewhere else.
there's much more than what you can see
Yeah,
from here.
Brought it back.
Most of it's
wooded.
south,
Back over there.
Oh, okay.
Down the hill.
but we own some across the road.
Okay.
All right,
All right.
let's come on inside. So yeah, most everything in here, the display room is marked, so you're welcome to read in here, kind of a self-guided part of the tour. But just so you know, this part of the room originally, or part of the house, was the dining room.
Okay.
And the floor on the other end could possibly be the original floor. That was some extra bedroom space. And where we have our gift shop was originally the food pantry and kitchen.
I have to go try to find some family. Good morning, everybody.
You see how they like pretty?
How's everybody
They
feeling?
have typewriters.
Is it better? It looks better.
That's a school book. Oh, wow. Long
That's the
division.
important part.
You're on yours.
That's like courtrooms.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, could be because it's at our mouth, there's really not anything, you really, yeah, because you'll ingest it. I can't do essential oils and things like that when you're, oh, that's a great idea, if you don't mind your teeth getting black. A charcoal tablet. I suck on them when I'm having like any ear trouble or teeth trouble or anything like that, or sore throat. So when you suck on this tablet, it's like a poultice in and of itself because it's wet in your mouth. So if she wanted to stick one up under her lip, she could even put part of it at a time under her lip, and it would be a constant poultice. I didn't think of that yesterday. We could have done that yesterday. Do you have tablets with you, or? Okay, I can bring some over.
Catch and bring the kids.
Dobre se pa tvoj si popisovať.
So who was it? Because she was searching for, she was reading, and got in trouble with
That was the one?
Oh, well, for the laundry, yeah, oh, that's right, they put it in the hot pot, that's what
And do
it
that.
is.
I've seen that. They do it now like a regular bucket.
Yeah,
Like learn if you like
She was
bucket
connected to him.
and plunger.
wow.
See, this is what keeps me down.
That was before that one. Yeah, oh, that's what I just said, no, before that, but they had this before they had the machine, before they had the machine and stuff and on there. Cause this used to come on a washing machine.
Oh, yeah, they need it. A lot of people in the world.
Those are the barrels that they. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, hide them away.
There's no limit to the usefulness of one, putting so
When state people come.
Yeah. But everybody's attention is a question about why we have a display for the War of 1812. He was a captain in the U.S. Army in the War of 1812. He was mostly utilized as a recruiter.
Yeah.
He was very highly respected in Vermont, so he was quite effective. But he was engaged in the Battle of Plattsburgh in 1814. The date was September 11.
Wow.
And it was the pivotal battle on the North Front. Our national anthem was written during the same war in Baltimore. But on the north side, it was the Battle of Plattsburgh. So he was a part of that. It only lasted 2 hours, and the Americans won, and they were outnumbered about 10-1.
And he surprisingly survived.
So it was truly a miracle that they won. You know, but at that point in his life, he was not a Christian. He didn't believe in miracles. So maybe God did that for him as much as America, to help him realize that God is real. He is involved in his life.
What was this? Did he have a profession or anything, like a job or anything like that after?
When he left the war is when he built this house.
When he built, okay.
Yeah. So here he was not only a farmer, but he was the justice of the peace.
Oh, really?
So the legal document on the left there on the top shelf, that's from his value. And when the church was opening the museum, then they heard, you know, the word got out, and they offered them. Yeah.
Do you have any of the writings, like with the 2300 days of prophecy, like when he was writing his notes?
Well, we have reprints. Well, we have original books, you know, but they were not his actual handwriting. There's a Bible at Andrews University that he owned, and it has his handwriting on the inside cover where he's calculating dates.
So he built the church?
Chapel?
Yeah, the
Well,
chapel.
he was not of health to actually be involved in the building of it. It was a year before he died.
Oh,
But we signed the deed for his
okay.
land for the committee to build it.
Oh, so the church was like way after the whole 1844.
Right.
Oh,
He was in the Baptist church in 1844.
He started that whole Millerite movement.
Yeah, he was very intentional about not starting his own church. Very purposeful about that. Butter churn. This would be for commercial sale. Well, when it gets wet, the wood swells and it seals itself. I was talking with someone recently, and they said about 20 or 30 minutes. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like a long time, but 20 or 30 minutes.
Because somebody was doing it, I saw it on TV, they were doing the one like this in a mason jar, and you just do this. I said 45 minutes, and that's when it became to look like something. Because the first it was just liquid, you just gotta keep the same speed, like you can't stop. You just gotta do that. The first one was like, yeah, that was hurt the arm.
Yes.
But that's why they were strong.
We'll give you a couple more minutes and then we'll go into the parlor.
This is the or just the one?
Do Morris today. They're gonna fight, you know, that way they can think between the shoe. Now they're gonna
And
now you have to
Bullets are much bigger than that, huh?
Alright.
Excuse me.
Well, this display case is just time period. There's nothing actually belong to the Miller family.
I'm gonna read this later.
There's a 12-pound mortar in this display case. That's the same size.
It's big and it's small.
The one that exploded just a couple feet from the battle. It should have killed him, but he was not. The original part of this room is the painting of Lucy, his wife. They were both 21 when they married. She lived 7 or 8 miles from here in Poultney, Vermont. And her father was very respected, highly known in that town. I think he might have been the first one to build a framed house in that town. So when they heard that Wayne Miller was marrying Lucy Smith, they didn't, those that didn't know him thought, well, he must be a really special guy to have a girl like her. So she was well known for her industry. One of the men that came to visit here, the year Miller died actually, she greeted him at the door, and he was very impressed with her firm handshake and her bright smile. So unfortunately she's not smiling in the picture because the painter's request and the artist would ask them not to smile. Makes their job easier. So at the end of his life, Wayne Miller was in a lot of pain. He had diabetes, he was blind, he had congestive heart failure, but his mind was clear. And he couldn't read the Bible, he couldn't read the songbooks. So he asked his family to read to him and to sing to him. And that's how he coped with his pain. And so this is one song in particular he asked to be sung to him at the end of his life. And it was included in his obituary in the newspaper. So we will sing just the first verse. It's a different tune. Most likely this tune is from 1853, 4 years after he died. There is a tune in another songbook by the Advent Christians from 1844 that may have been the original tune. But focus again mainly on the words. The second line of the first stanza, infinite day excludes the night, and pleasures banish pain. And that gave him hope in his pain. But beyond that, a place where they would never be separated again.
Amen.
Just trying to imagine the land of pure delight. Grace eternal. reign and never parts again.
Oh, no, she can sing.
So when William Miller lived here, the first year he was not a Christian, so this was not a place to study his Bible. But he was the justice of the peace, so likely he wrote out legal documents here. But it was the year after he built this house that he met Jesus in this room. And he was desperate for a Savior, and he had the family Bible. This would be more like the size of his preaching Bible. But with his family Bible and concordance, he actually had bought, this is not his, but he had bought his Cruden's concordance when he was 16. Which shows he must have been trying to understand the Bible. Again, he failed on his own. But when he met Jesus, it changed everything for him. And the Bible came alive. And he couldn't put the book down. He would sometimes read it all night long. And he went to one of his friends who was not a Christian. And the particular belief is deist. Some of you probably have heard of deists. Some of our pioneers like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson were deists. He was talking to one of his deist friends, and just so excited about his new friend Jesus, and his friend could not believe what happened to my friend William Miller, you know. So he reminded William Miller of all the reasons why he didn't believe in the Bible, you know, the logical, intellectual reasons. And William Miller hadn't really had time to think about all of that. He was just excited with his relationship with Jesus. So that is why he began a very systematic study of the Bible, to be able to explain to his deist friends why he now believed the Bible was. You mentioned that as we go on this path, on the right side would have been the maple grove. But just in terms of trees, the largest tree on the farm, and so then like probably the oldest, is actually the one behind you. It's 51 inches in diameter. And they typically, these are sugar maple. They typically, the maple syrup comes from the sugar maple. Yeah. They typically grow at a very slow rate. So it's unusual to have them that large. So growing at about 1/10 of an inch a year is the average growth rate. That would be 250 years.
Wow.
So that likely was already here when he built the farm.
Oh, yeah.
So, but even so, some of these on the right-hand side could still be 150 or so years old. And so just keep that in mind as we go up the path, and then we'll stop at Ascension Rock on the left.
Okay.
So wait, Sorry, so William Miller ran through here somewhere?
He ran somewhere into these woods. And I mean, I think the film Tell the World demonstrates that pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, how he ran out there and was following.
Why, God? Why me?
Right.
Almost reminded me of Guy Tesser from Martin Luther, when he was raining and he actually went out and asked God to save him from the storm when he was traveling. And I think that's the moment that he kind of gave his heart.
No, you don't hear this in this city. Sweet music.
The only birds you got in the city is pigeons.
Right, and all they do is poop on everything and steal your food.
Yeah.
You know?
This is it? This is
Ascension Rock.
considered.
Anybody want to guess what kind of rock it is?
A volcano.
Yeah.
A lot of people
It
think
does
it's
look like
lava or
lava.
volcanic.
Yeah, it do.
It's a very common answer, but it's not. Slate would be underneath. Actually, typically slate is on top of this kind of rock, but in this case,
It's not.
it's not. Slate has disappeared. But this is the most there's more slate in this part of the country than anywhere else in the world. Any other guesses?
Multiple
I'll give you a
choice
hint.
question.
Maybe, this is the kind of rock we get calcium carbonate from.
Oh, really?
What is it? Very good. Limestone.
Oh.
Excellent.
Oh man.
So limestone is made from fossilized sea
I'm feeling
shells.
dumb now.
So this was underwater at some time.
Okay. You can see the
and likely was formed, the deep cuts and the fact that it's here up on top, because typically limestone is down under.
You think it rose up like
would be
this?
from the flood.
Oh, okay.
So Ellen White talks about how limestone was exploding during the flood.
Okay. So this might be.
underground.
Oh. Okay.
So it could have been, come to the surface during the flood. So it is a soft rock, so some of the erosion is just over the years from the rain.
Mm-hmm.
But there's different kinds of rock mixed in. There's a kind of a strip of it right there. And so it's puzzling, even for geologists that come and visit the site, to know exactly how
it came up.
Those got mixed together and how the scratch marks got on the rock. There's even some petrified wood here. So it's quite a conglomeration, activity
Of a
from
mixture.
the flood.
When man can't explain it, God did it.
And they were all waiting here.
So as far as the story of people waiting here in 1844, Miller initially preached 1843, but he did not set a particular date. But eventually, people kind of pushed him to set a date from the spring of 1843 to the spring of 1844. And so when the spring of 1844 passed, they experienced their first disappointment. And then in the summer of 1844 is when Samuel Snow announced at a camp meeting in New Hampshire that the Day of Atonement, which was when the sanctuary was cleansed, according to the Jewish calendar, would fall on October 22, 1844.
And the Jewish calendar had how many months in a year?
12.
12 months in a year?
30 days in a month.
30 days in a month, okay.
So 360 days a year. And so William Miller was one of the last ones to accept the date October 22 because of the scripture, no man knows the day or the hour. It was 16 days before October 22 when he finally accepted that he would come on that day. And so on that day, there were perhaps 100,000 people. Some have said there could have been even 2 million.
Wow.
People influenced, if not looking for him to come, were influenced by the message. And so obviously they could not all have been here.
Right.
But most likely people stayed in their local communities for the most part. But there could have been a gathering here from the local community of believers of maybe 50 or so. But there are, again, it's a story that's been handed down by word of mouth, so we can't officially say for sure who was here or how many were here. But it is a place that is being used by God to spread the message of 1844. Because we have local non-Adventist community that come here because of the scenery, and they just feel something different here. You know, it's just like there's angels here or something that they can sense. There's a peacefulness here, and so, you know, people that are not interested in the farm or even the chapel, this is almost their rock.
Serenity, yeah. Serenity.
This is almost like a community rock. So it's a very special place and an opportunity that God is using to spread the message. But if you look at it from an aerial point, like a drone, it looks like a human brain. The texture, the folds of the...
Yeah, I thought it looked a little bit familiar. But just looking at that right over there.
Yeah. Any questions?
Very interesting. So I guess it's go back
Yes.
Where you gonna put that picture at so everybody
I'm a put everything to. Well, the pictures. I'm gonna get everybody numbers and then send it to everyone.
do it like that?
Yeah.
For the community or just for him and his family?
There were probably 33 people originally.
Preaching at 11, Sabbath school. They had Sabbath school after the preaching. Sabbath school was at 12.
And then they had an evening service.
Okay, this is nice. It looks like a nice location to blow out that. The end shall be. Yeah, they had Sabbath school after Divine Hour. Yeah, but it wasn't the secondary basis. It says the first. Yeah.
Alright, so when they were meeting in 1844 on the Rock, this was not here.
Oh, okay.
They were going to church in the Baptist meeting house, which was just down the road. So he was disfellowshipped in 1845, and they likely met in a schoolhouse for 3 years. And then in 1848 is when they built this chapel.
Why was he disfellowshipped?
1845.
And it was because of his beliefs?
Because of disappointment, because it seemed like he was a false prophet.
Wow.
So many Adventists were disfellowshipped before the disappointment, like Alan Harmon's family.
Yeah.
But the names that we do know of the original members are on the Stark plaque.
Okay.
Many of them are relatives of William Miller, but there were community names on here as well. He died the next year, 1849, and so the next year, 1850, this organized into the Adventist Evangelical Church, which doesn't exist today. But in 1863, well actually 1860, became organized as an Advent Christian church. So they actually own this chapel, and whereas the rest of the property is owned by the Seventh-day Adventists.
They still own this?
They still own it today. So the family owned it until the same time that they sold the farm. They gave this to the Advent Christian Church. So this has been belonging to them for the last 70 years or so. But there was a stipulation in the deed that there would be a committee of 6 people that would maintain this building. 3 of them, they said, would need to be Seventh-day Adventist, and 3 would be Advent Christians. So that committee still meets on an annual basis.
Oh, did really?
Yes.
So what did they do anything here at all? You know, they don't use it for anything?
So as far as meetings,
Yeah.
they worshipped here every Sunday until the 1940s.
Oh, okay. And since then, they don't use it?
Since then, it's not been used on a weekly basis. But the family also stipulated in the deed that there would be an annual meeting by each of the denominations.
Okay.
So they still have their annual event. Only about 20 people come. And then we have our annual event, which is the William Miller camp meeting, the last Sabbath in July.
So when they have it over in the same.
We now have a tent. We set up a tent and there's about 300 people that come.
Wow.
But originally it started here.
Okay.
And we just outgrew it.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way it has worked. They give us free use of the chapel, and we clean it for them. We cut the grass for them, and if there's any repairs, we let them know. So it works well, really.
And they're not ready to send it to us.
We have asked them, but they're not ready yet. I don't know if they will in the future. If they're willing to sell it.
Sell it back to the others.
To our church, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is a Miller Bible from 1886. But what is original is the pulpit, the bench, the floor, and all the benches out here. The cushions are from 1960 or so. So they just had hardwood benches.
And how many members do you think hold?
We've had as many as 100 people in here.
Wow,
It was tight. 75 is more comfortable.
That was a choir office.
Yeah, that's right.
Choir,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. The piano and pump organ were given in the 1900s.
Okay.
So they didn't originally have musical instruments. The lamps are from the 1800s, but they're not original.
And they're candle lamps
Like
or
kerosene.
kerosene.
These are kerosene.
Kerosene, yeah.
They had oil lamps or candles originally. The windows are about 100 years old, 1908. They were put in by the Advent Christians. That's why William Miller is Reverend William Miller.
How's the connection between William Miller and
Same connection that we have with him. So both their pioneers and our pioneers were part of the same movement before the disappointment.
Okay.
It was just afterwards that there was a division.
How large is that church though?
Well, today it's 2006 is the latest census. There were 25,000 members in the United States and about 100,000 in other countries. So they're much smaller than our church, but in the late 1800s, there were 10 of them for every Seventh-day Adventist.
Wow.
So they were by far the largest denomination at the very beginning,
Yeah.
but they have stayed about the same size.
Like, this is the first time I heard about, I heard about it during, when I was reading a little bit about it, but I didn't know they still existed.
Yeah.
So, what do they believe? Is it the same beliefs? Is it different? They do believe Christ is coming, but where do we differ? It's just the dates, the Sabbath?
So the distinction came after the disappointment. So on October 22, 1844, most all Adventists were uniform in their belief. I mean, some are Methodist, some are Baptist, some are Congregationalist, Christian Connection, but they had a common belief in the second coming of Christ. They all worshipped on Sunday. And yet there was some division about the state of the dead. Charles Fitch and George Storrs had been preaching starting in 1843 that when you die you rest in the grave unconscious until the resurrection. But that was a minority of Adventists who believed that. So William Miller was one of those who came to believe that you don't receive your reward until the resurrection, but you remain conscious after you die. Whereas the Advent Christians believe, like we do, that you rest in the grave until the second coming. So we hold that in common with them, and it's through the Advent Christian Church that the Jehovah's Witness came to have that belief.
That's why our doctors are a little similar, but they put a little twist on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the difference then would be the new truth that came in after the disappointments, such as the Sabbath, the heavenly sanctuary, of what did happen on October 22. All of that makes us different from them. Because they have not accepted any new beliefs that came after the disappointment. So for them, October 22 is not an anniversary, no significance at all.
So they just try to like sweep that up, like that's done.
They actually set a new date. Yeah, interesting.
Wow.
I forget who it was, his name, but he was preaching about the 10 years. Watches, each watch is 10 years.
Brother Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
So they set another date, 10 years after the disappointment. And we're disappointed the second time, or third time actually.
Right.
So William Miller and his children did not keep the Sabbath at that point in time, but after that, did they start accepting the Sabbath?
We don't have, Langdon, we were talking about when you weren't there, at the beginning of our tour, only one of his children became a Seventh-day Adventist. Yeah, so he passed away in 1849, quite a while before the Adventist Church was formed officially. But there was, as early as the spring of 1844, Adventists keeping the Sabbath in New Hampshire. But we don't have any documentation as to when he learned about the Seventh-day Sabbath, other than Ellen White saying in the early writings that he was given more light, and he was just resisting it at the end. So.
Did she specify what light he was given? No, right? Okay.
No.
Ellen White do write that she sees William Miller in heaven.
She didn't see him in heaven, but she says that he will come forth at the sound of the last trump.
So, for example, in church, there are Sabbath keepers.
Well, yeah, it says Sabbath school, but in
Sunday sometimes called Sunday Sabbath.
they call it Sunday Sabbath.
So there's Sunday.
Yeah, but that's their Sabbath.
Oh.
Right. So, like, even the song, like, Don't Forget the Sabbath, they're talking about Sunday, the author.
Oh, really?
And,
Wow.
even,
I did not know that. Wow. Oh man.
so, and William Miller had a sermon on the Sabbath, but he was talking about Sunday.
Wow.
But did William Miller and Ellen White ever met?
In Portland, Maine, when she was 12 years old the first time.
Oh, she met them. That's all I've been wanting to ask that question too. How did she learn to know so much about him?
Yeah, he came there
From her
twice.
first meeting him, and then that's how she followed him after that.
Didn't he?
Stories and his understanding and his historical, story.
Well, what she writes about him in The Great Controversy, a lot of that she got from the book written by Joshua Himes and Apollos Hale called Memoirs.
Oh, okay.
Published in 1853.
Okay.
And James White wrote a book about William Miller also. But yeah, she personally met him in Portland.
She did.
Maine.
Okay. But she got most of her stories through the other authors.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question, but I forgot the name of the organization. It's a popular elite organization that they have now that was back then. I forgot the name of it. Like a lodge. What do you call it?
Illuminati?
No, not Illuminati.
Mason Freemasons.
Right, was he? Because I know somebody was saying that yesterday when I was here.
He was a Mason.
He was until his death?
No, he actually resigned in 1833.
Okay.
Who are you talking about?
William Miller.
He was a Mason? I'm getting educated right now. I did not know that. That's crazy.
He was the highest rank you could get in his community.
Wow.
Wow. And he left all of that.
And he, in his letter of resignation, it's mostly because the brethren were disturbed by his involvement, not a personal conviction. So
Right.
Maybe that's why he kept resisting for so long. God was calling.
Could be part of it, yes. Yes, because he knew he had to resign from different things.
He was a politician.
Yeah.
So when you say the brethren, you talking about the Masonic brothers or
Baptist.
Church.
the Baptist church?
Yeah, the church, yeah. You would think it would be the church. So did he hold a high position as a Mason?
The highest order is what it
He
says.
was. Oh, he was. Oh, okay.
33 degree?
Well, in Poultney, Vermont, they probably.
Oh, different.
each
It's
lodge
different.
or-
Yeah,
You have a higher ranking.
but he
than
had
others.
the highest wherever he was.
Where he was. yeah.
Oh, no wonder. Oh, okay. Now that kind of explains a little bit about that, him resisting. And even when he tried to, run into the forest or the woods and ask for, and not to be him to preach,
Yeah.
Mostly because of that.
There was another Freemason, I forget his name, but he converted to Adventism too. Sister White met with him. Was it Farnsworth or something like this? Fans? Falkhead, there you go. And he had a dream, and he met with Sister White. Sister White had like a 50-page written down document.
About him?
Yeah, about like basically the dream that he had was that Sister White had something to reveal to him, and when she revealed to him, he had a divine encounter with her. And he put away all Freemasonry and because he was struggling. He was with both. He was Freemason and Adventist.
Oh.
But God, whew.
Yeah. Got at him, huh?
The Lord showed her all the secret stuff that nobody should know.
Oh.
She started,
So she revealed it to him that she knew.
revealing it to him, he was like, there's no way you know
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Without being one of us. Right?
Like secret symbols and all that she was doing. Yeah, that's crazy.
That must have been scary, right?
Well, another interesting part of the story is that God gave her a message for him years before she did.
Get out of here.
She just felt like it's not the right time.
To come
But
out.
then in the delay is when he had the dream.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he went to her,
Uh-huh.
and then she said, God showed me this so many years, I don't remember how many years it was.
Wow.
And so that was part of the convincing for
Yes,
him.
yes, to get him to go ahead on the
That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
He
that's
told you this
crazy.
morning?
That's crazy.
It's quite interesting when she died, how many non-Adventists came to her funeral. She had influence with a ton of people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
She had a better reputation then than she does now.
Yeah.
Well, she spoke of it that her writings would become non-existent in the later days, that the church would fall away from it. Yeah, they either change it or just fully fall away from it.
And it's just basically because people don't want to see the truth and follow it through the end.
That's why it's so important for us to grab all the information we can now, because eventually,
It's going to be that way.
that's it. This church is going to be non-existent. It's going to fully apostatize. So you're going with whatever you're taught now. Just soak it all in.
Yeah, if any of you are just interested in more of Adventist history, and you're on the road a lot, I would definitely recommend Pathways of the Pioneers.
Yes, that's a great one.
We've listened to that half a dozen times. We sell it in our gift shop, but it's CD or MP3 file. I think maybe even some of the episodes available online for free, but there's some really excellent stories.
You won't be able to stop.
Do we get
Is
in?
it an audio story?
It's by Your Story Hour.
Do we get an Adventist discount? No.
If you come and volunteer, you get a 20% discount. $69.95. It's like 22 CDs. 22 CDs.
Wow. It's like the story hour. Like it's very.
And when you get to the end, you're like, that's the last CD.
Yeah. Because they animated, it's not animated, but it's
It's very interesting. Adults and children, both.
And that's the Bible we lost.
The Miller Bible from 1886.
What do you mean the Miller Bible?
This is the family Bible.
Oh, that's right, that's the one you were talking about. Now, when they have the family Bible, does that mean that everybody's name is in there or something? Is that what makes it?
Said don't touch.
Why did y'all put that there? I just wanted to. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna turn it there and say,
Oh, it says don't touch.
Says don't touch it. And that's all I want to do.